Cop Chat. You've got questions for the police? They're here to give you the answers on WEFM 99.9.
The world has become such a cruel place. Something is wrong with the human race. Preacher man say it's wonders and signs. We are living in the end of times. Where is the love we once used to know? Where is the kindness we used to show? The heart of man is so full of hate. Let's make a change before it's too late. Too much killing, too much blood spilling. Each and every morning, it's weeping and mourning. We've got to stop all the crimes, erase the violence, let our voice be heard. We can't sit in silence. The hope of tomorrow is in no use today. We've got to live in love. Crime and violence don't pay.
And it is time for us to bring to you this week's edition of Cop Chat. And we don't exactly have cops or police officers in studio this morning, but they are still part of law enforcement. All right. So this morning we are graced with the presence of Miss Monifa Allen, Assistant Controller, Planning, Research and Human Development Officer, and Mr. Lorenzo Barber, Systems Administrator, both from the Customs Department. And we are going to be talking on the topic of customs, protecting society through vigilance and commitment. So, Miss Allen, I can say Monifa Lorenzo is fine?
Yes, you can.
All right. Good morning, Lorenzo and Monifa. And you are most definitely no stranger to the studios of WEFM, so welcome back.
Thank you for having us, Roleza. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Maka.
Morning.
Good morning to all our listeners.
Good morning. Thank you.
Short and to the point. All right, Lorenzo. So let us know what's happening with the customs, actually. I think you should be celebrating a week of activities. So you could just maybe let us know a little bit about that. And then we will go into the role of customs, why customs is important, why, as Vince mentioned, we shouldn't get annoyed with customs and, you know, all that stuff.
Well, we're here today as part of a week of activities in celebration of International Customs Day, which was January 26th. So every January 26th, the St. Vincent and the Grenadines Customs join all other customs throughout the world in recognizing the work of customs officers, their impact on society in protecting our nation, protecting our people, collecting revenue, border protection, trade facilitation, supply chain integrity. So we like to recognize the work of customs officers. We like to celebrate the customs officers for always showing up and doing their job and educate the public on the work of the customs, the mandates of the customs. So we're here as part of that week of activities.
Okay. So what have you actually done for the week of activities so far?
So far, we started the week by asking churches to pray for us. So we really invite the presence of God in everything that we do. And that's how we started on Sunday. And on Monday, we had a prayer breakfast where we basically prayed for ourselves. Mm-hmm. So we had the Right Reverend Leopold Friday, who is a past customs officer as well. So he was invited to our prayer breakfast. We also had an exhibition on Tuesday at the Ministerial Car Park. Our exhibition featured a number of our stakeholders, including the police, Ministry of Trade, Plans Quarantine, etc. We had a number of our stakeholders who we perform agency duties for and who we work along with in doing our work. We also were on another radio program on Monday night, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. And we had a staff health and wellness day yesterday where we had blood pressure, blood sugar testing. We had various seminars for our staff, including mental health awareness, nutrition, prostate cancer, or PCOS, any type of different types of seminars that would help our staff to take better care of themselves, because that's our most valuable resource and we want them to be healthy and strong. And we also had a walk and walk out in the afternoon where we also invited various stakeholders to join with us to walk a route throughout Kingstown. And then we had a nice little cool down at the department.
Okay. So the week ends on Saturday?
The week ends on Friday.
Okay. Oh, tomorrow?
Yes, tomorrow. So tomorrow we have a staff social.
Okay.
So that would wrap up and bring down the curtains on our week of activities.
Okay. So Lorenzo, what's the purpose of customs?
All right. Customs is a law enforcement organization, right? Since the days gone by in Roman emperor days, right? Customs was necessary for the collection of revenue and the protection of borders. Over the years, it has evolved, right? But still has the same role to play, right? In St. Vincent and the Grenadines, we are one of the most important revenue collectors for the government. And we are also the first agency that you meet at the borders, whether it be via sea or via air. So we have a responsibility to do a lot of agency duties for a lot of different ministries. Because let's say, for example, the Ministry of Health has a warning out on a particular item. The first line of defense is the Customs and Excise, right? So we will do the necessary examinations. We will allow the persons at the ministry to come and do an inspection to see if that item is allowed or not. Right. So we have a great deal of responsibility when it comes to actually protecting St. Vincent, right? And we are committed to that.
Okay. Now, many persons don't like to deal with customs, right? For various reasons. Every time you think of customs, it's more money that you have to spend or too much money that you have to spend, right? But in terms of how should persons really view the role of customs officers, right? Why should we not look at customs, well, some persons, I know it's not everybody, right? Look at customs with animosity or frustrations, in a sense.
All right. Well, just like any other job or role, right? For example, police, teachers, and any other public servant, right? We have our role to play when it comes to law enforcement in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. Now, the thing I tell persons is that we are a law enforcement organization, right? So whatever we do is based on legislation. If you want to see certain things change, especially persons would complain about the amount of duties that they pay, right? You need to speak to your representative. You need to speak to the persons who make the laws. However, sometimes we are subject to forces outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So, for example, we use what we call the Common External Tariff. Now, this is passed by CARICOM. So all the CARICOM countries get together. They take the harmonized system from the World Trade Organization, and they sit down and decide, okay, this is how we're going to implement it within this region. After that, they decide on rates specific to each island. Now, some islands have lower rates than others based on the fact that, we have more developed countries, less developed countries, but these rates are set out by CARICOM, and all we do is simply implement them within St. Vincent and the Grenadines, right? And that's the import duty side of things. And then local government might put an excise tax or additional taxes on items that they feel are required based on health risks. For example, aerated beverages, because they want to encourage more juices to be consumed, and deposit bottle levy because they want to be able to control the amount of cans and bottles that come into the country, right, and find a way that we can recycle or dispose of them properly so that they do not become a health risk. Okay. So what persons should do is make themselves aware, right, of the reasons why certain things are taxed in that way. And if they have issues with it, take it to the legislature, because at the end of the day, every tax that we apply is based on some law.
And I would like to add further, right? Customs have basically three main mandates, right? We collect revenue, right? That's one. We facilitate trade. We make it easier. We make it easy. We're there to assist in imports and exports, and we protect the borders. We live in an island with 32 islands and cays. It's what we call a porous border, and we have to be present at our ports of entry to ensure that we are protected from external forces. But And we collect the revenue. The government utilizes this revenue to run the country and to ensure that things are funded. But even outside of revenue collection, where we protect the borders, we are doing every intervention, every seizure, or every enforcement measure that is implemented within the customs. It's with the intention to safeguard our communities. It's for preventing harm, ensuring that our people can live and thrive in safety. So some of the examples that Lorenzo gave in terms of recycling, ensuring that food are safe, that you consume safe food, that items are cleared through the system in a timely manner so that they are good for consumption, to ensure that pesticides that could disseminate our agriculture, that diseases that could cause harm to our populace don't just come in to the borders. The customs, we're there not just to collect money from you, but also to protect you.
And I think that's a point that needs to be emphasized. Like persons coming through the airport, let's say you come in with a bouquet of flowers, right? You're coming through the airport with a bouquet of flowers, and customs asks you, well, did you get I think you're supposed to have something certified, like
a phytosanitary certificate.
Right. What was it called?
A phytosanitary certificate.
Right. Persons might get upset that they're being asked questions at customs, or let's say you're going through somebody's luggage and you find a gun or you find a weapon. Emphasize to persons, why it is customs has to play their part. I know you touched on it a little bit there in your explanation, but emphasize to persons that it's not just about that individual, but the wider society that is being protected.
Yes, I would say this. The Black Sekotoka did not come from La Soufrière or Barley. It came on a vessel from outside of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And that is why the customs officers have to always be vigilant. You never know. You cannot see it with your eyes. So, for example, if there is a container, somebody bringing a container of used tires, let's say used tires, right? That container has to be fumigated. Why? The tires were used, so there may be soil material on the tires, plant material on the tires, water in the tires. And we have to ensure, the customs has to ensure to reach out to the Ministry of Agriculture, I think, to ensure that there are no harmful diseases or pests, because it's not just the importer of that container. It's not just that specific person that would be affected. Once those tires get out and whatever harmful diseases or pests, that's the whole entire St. Vincent and the Grenadines, right? So all our interventions are really rooted in not just collecting revenue, but in protecting our society and ensuring that people could live in safety.
Okay. What do you find as the most challenging part of your job, in a sense, or the most challenging part that customs officers tend to face?
We have a lot of challenges, right? We have a lot of challenges based on different things. The role of customs is so wide. It's so vast. A very big challenge that we have, and like I said before, we live in a very porous country. Customs, one of the roles of customs is border protection. And we have to ensure that we protect all of these islands up the chain, ensure that revenue is collected for yachties who decide to come and enjoy our beautiful waters, that we are able to intercept. Everybody is paying their fair dues, that drugs, guns, smuggling does not occur. And that could be a challenge for us, given the scope of our borders and our limitations in terms of a patrol vessel or staff.
Okay.
I think one of our greatest challenges are our customers. And I say that because sometimes customers are not knowledgeable about our roles, our responsibilities, and also their responsibilities when they come to the customs department. Now, we have been trying to fix that by having our website, the customs.gov.vc, and put in as much information about our procedures and legislation that we are tasked to enforce on there for persons to go on and read. Another
I just want to interject. I would like to encourage everybody to visit our website, customs.gov.vc. That's customs, customs.gov.vc. We have a lot of information on the website. And also don't hesitate to call the department. We are accustomed to giving advice, to helping persons, especially you want to import something, you're not sure what are the restrictions, what is your duties, you can call the department. The website has a duty calculator for vehicles and for general merchandise. You can use that duty calculator, calculate your duty so that you know ahead of time what you could anticipate from the department. You know, the information is there. We just want to encourage you to educate yourself and to help us to help you.
Yes.
Go ahead, Lorenzo.
Right. Another issue that we have is technology. Now, persons would say, okay, when I travel overseas, I, don't have to go through customs. I don't get my bags checked and that kind of thing. Not realizing that they have a lot more non-intrusive means of examination than us, right? Now, we have been making efforts to acquire those equipment. So we have barrel scanners at the new port, at the Kingston port. We have a container scanner at the new port as well, right? So persons have been trained to use them, right? And we're going to implement those more so that we can continue to facilitate trade, right? At this point, though, there's still some gaps. We're not as far ahead as, like we say, for example, England, New York, Miami, right? So we're just asking persons to work along with us, right, as we move into new technologies, right, so that we can facilitate them better.
Okay. And from your view, how has smuggling in particular changed over the years? As you just mentioned, the scanners, the barrel scanners, etc. But have you noticed any change in trends, and has the customs been able to keep up to some extent with these changes? Although I wonder, should I?
What I could
but I
say,
know, right?
what,
I mean, I saw a phrase it afterwards, so answers best as without. Yeah.
What I can say is that the criminals are very savvy, right? They perhaps if they use their talents in other areas, we would have a better world. But they are very savvy. Trends change rapidly, constantly, and how the customs manage this type of risk is, well, we practice risk management, and we are learning to incorporate that more. That would just mean that we spend more time targeting what we would deem high risk, so that we focus our time and our energies in high risk areas. Another important part about that is intelligence sharing. We have to partner with not just our local agencies, but also our regional partners, regional customs, RSS, CARICOM Impacts, FIU, right? So we partner with local and regional and international partners to get information on what is happening. We also conduct constant ongoing training because, as I said, the trends change rapidly and we have to keep up with that. So especially CARICOM Impacts, the CARICOM community, we conduct a lot of training throughout the environment, specifically for keeping up with the changing trends in enforcement, in smuggling, in AI, in IP, right? Intellectual property. So that's how we manage the changes in smuggling. I can't go into details.
Right.
But
Okay. All right. In terms of trade, how does the customs balance protecting society while ensuring that legitimate trade and travel are not unnecessarily delayed?
All right. Again, right, we have been introducing more technology, right? So we're in the process of upgrading the Asecutor system, and part of that is the ASI Express module. Now, the ASI Express module would allow couriers to do a level of clearance, right, separate from customs. So there will be items that will be pre-authorized, right, that they're allowed to clear. but they have to now implement certain measures within their organization. So, for example, they have to have packet scanners, right, and have that available for us to review once those items have been declared, right? That should facilitate persons, so it's a faster process, and we would now have to do less intrusive examinations, right? That's one method. We're also further refining our risk management modules so that we can, as Ms. Allen said, allocate our efforts into more high risk consignments, and low risk consignees, low risk consignments will be given more freedom in their clearance, right? So we have lane selectivity, red lane, yellow lane, green and blue lane. And the green and blue lane allows you to get your consignments without any customs intervention, and we do post-audit checks, while the yellow and red lane now are for more high-risk items that need our intervention.
Okay. And where all can we find customs station though?
We have about, is it 13? We have 13 ports of entry. So, and at every port of entry and at every checkpoint. So we have a few that are not ports of entry, but
sufferance wharfs for the embarkation and disembarkation of passengers.
So, for example, approved
wharfs.
Yeah. Right?
Okay.
So we have approved wharfs for yachts, for example, but it's not an official port of entry. So at all these 13 ports of entries, we have the service of the customs present. That would include Beckway, Airport Seaport, Canawan, Union Island, Mustique, Kingstown, the two ports in Kingstown, Argyle. We have approved wharves in Chateaubelair, Wallaboom, Blue Lagoon.
Okay. Question: when persons are coming through the airport, and you have to sign the declaration form, and persons don't declare things, what happens?
Well, from that point, it's basically a false declaration, right? And you can be fined, you can be charged, you can be subject to the items that you didn't declare being seized, right? So we encourage persons to be voluntarily compliant. There, as a passenger through the airport, you are allowed, you have a passenger allowance, right? So you should make yourself aware of what that is when it comes to appliances, tech items, even alcohol, cigarettes, and so on.
Okay. As we're looking at this thing on this border security or something or the other, it's called one of these shows, and persons who don't declare on the spot, or who don't declare, they get fined on the spot. Is that what happens with our airport? Because I've actually never seen anybody pulled over by customs for not declaring something, right? That's what I'm saying. I have not seen it. But what tends to happen?
Notice.
Maybe. So what tends to happen in that case? Are persons fined on the spot, or do they have to go to court, or what generally happens? Just trying to safeguard persons from actually declaring when they're coming through the airport, rather than having to avoid challenges after.
All right. Well, what usually happens is that they will be questioned, right? Because while ignorance is no excuse, right? We will give allowances to the fact that you did not know that you were supposed to declare certain things, right? And then what usually happens is that we would charge you for the item that you didn't declare in the case where it is a dutiable item and you're allowed to import it, or we will seize it, right, and have the preventive department deal with the matter afterwards.
Okay.
So if it's a dutiable item and you did not declare, just to be clear, you will be charged on the spot. So you'll have to pay your duties so that you could go ahead with your items.
Okay. All right.
Sorry, I just wanted to add something else to the question previously about facilitating trade. Just a reminder to our customers, we do have point of sale machines at our cash station, so you can pay with your card, and we have an e-payment facility for registered Azikuda users that you can pay for your consignments online.
Okay. All right. So we are going to open the phone lines. The phone lines are open at this time. Should you have a question for the customs officers who are with us this morning, you can call 457-9997. All right, to engage them a little bit.
A question though, how do customs protect our borders during disasters?
we protect the borders in the same manner as we would during regular time. Just mean that it's more difficult because persons want the items immediately. There's a large influx of items, and additionally, ports that are not usually used for cargo, right, are open for cargo, right? So they become approved wharves as well. So what end up happening is that we go out and we do the additional work. We do the examinations. Because I remember during the last volcanic eruption, it was a very difficult time, right? In terms of the amount of work that we had to do to ensure that the items that were coming in, even though they were relief items, even though they were donations, right, were fit for human consumption. And we did have to work along with the Ministry of Agriculture Phytosanitary Department, as well as the vet and Port Health, to have them inspect certain consignments, well, all consignments, to ensure that they're fit for human consumption.
So what we did at the customs, we worked extra hours, we set up additional stations. So I think during burial, we had a station at the tarmac where we would land the containers and examine along with our agencies, the vets, everybody. And we work very closely with NEMO. So partnership is really important in times of disaster, having clear chains of communication. So we have point persons who are responsible for communicating with the different agencies. And basically we set up additional stations, we allocate additional staff to get it done because people are in need.
But have you found from the experiences that we've had with, well, multiple disasters, that some persons have tried to take advantage of the system?
Absolutely, it happens. It happens all the time, and that's why the customs are here to ensure that the checks and balances, even though we're trying to get help to people, trying to get aid to people, we still have to ensure that the checks and balances are done. And not just to curtail persons trying to take advantage, but also to ensure that, because a lot of the things that people send sometimes aren't good for human consumption. So we still have to ensure that the items are healthy, they're good for consumption, right? So, yeah.
But and it's important to let persons know, right? So, for example, even when you get a barrel or a box, right? A person will say, "Oh, that's for me alone. I am only taking it to my house," but it's not really for you alone, right? You're gonna have friends over, you're gonna have family over, right? And it's gonna spread within the community. So we have to be mindful what we allow into the country, because there are instances. Let's say, for example, your family might send you a barrel or a box, but during the process, right, it was contaminated by rodents based on where it was stored in the shipping warehouse. And now we would have to call in Port Health and discard anything that can be a possible agent for leptospirosis, for example, right? Because that now would create a greater health risk within St. Vincent and the Grenadines and put more pressure on our healthcare system.
And what about, like, there's the persons with barrels coming in that have expired food items, etc. How do persons react to that? Because I could imagine that confrontation, well, that interaction not necessarily being a pleasant one in terms of having to explain. So do you tend to find that, let's say you find a barrel with maybe half of the things expired or very, very close to the expiration date, how do persons tend to react to the customs officer trying to educate them as to why they should not consume this or that item? Have you come across situations like that?
Well, what you find these days most often is that instead of a hard set expiration date, they have a best buy date, right? And what that usually means is that they cannot be sold retail at that point, right? But there's a 6-month period by which you can consume them. So we would take into consideration that, as well as the quantities. Now, if you were to import a couple cans of corned beef, per se, right, and they were close to the best by date or just past the best by date, then we would be lenient and say, okay, this is for your own personal consumption. But let's say you have a barrel with 5 cases, then that becomes a problem, because now it more than likely is not for you alone, right? You will be distributing in some way, shape, or form, and then that would have to be dealt with accordingly. And we just want persons to know that if the same thing happened to a supermarket, is the exact same thing that would happen to them, where they would be detained and and would have to be destroyed because, right, it creates a health risk not within your household but outside of your household.
Okay. So, but persons are generally receptive to being told, or you find it's a bit of a challenge?
Most oftentimes, it's a bit of a challenge.
Okay. Okay. All right. So let's go back to the topic of department or interagency dependence, right? Who else does the customs work along with? Because you're not a standalone organization to some extent. Who else do you work along with, and why?
Right. We work along with the Ministry of Trade to enforce the license schedule, right? Because certain items being imported into Simonson from outside the OACS, from outside the CARICOM, are required to have a license. We work along with the Ministry of Health for food items for local consumption. We work along with the vet for raw meats and live animals. We plant quarantine for plant items and certain raw vegetables, fruits, soil material. Right, so even if a badge of sand comes to Simonson, right, they would have to have phytosanitary certification, and the Ministry of Health would have to go and do their inspections to make sure there's nothing inside the sand that can cause damage to the country.
Oh, yeah, shipped into all that sand though.
It's usually examination based on when it's offloading, right? So they would do inspections then. We work along with the police to enforce firearm, the FIU, for monies coming into the country. We enforce the permits and licenses for NTRC, for example, for radio telecommunication equipment, cell phones over a certain quantity, drones, and that kind of thing. Right. So there are a lot of different agencies. We work along with the Ministry of Health when it comes to refrigerants, the ozone depleting substances, right? Because there's a quota on that, and only certain companies are allowed to import those items based on application at the start of the year. So a company who wishes to import a refrigerant must make an application at the start of the year to the Ministry of Health. They will be given a quota of how many pounds they're allowed to bring in. And within the year, we keep track of the quota to ensure that they do not pass that amount.
Okay. And why is it important though?
Well, when it comes to that, right, it's the Ministry of Health's responsibility to ensure that we meet our obligation to certain international organizations, right? So, for example, we would have signed on to different treaties with the UN, with the World Trade Organization, with the World Customs Organization, and those are some of the requirements that we have to.
So we signed on to the Montreal Protocol. That basically is a UN treaty that controls ozone depleting substances, and so part of our obligation is to monitor the importation of these substances to ensure that we do not go over.
Curious question. Does the customs come under regular checks? I suppose checks is the word I want to use. In that, because you say that you partner with other agencies or other international agencies, but is your processes, is your regulations, whatever it is that you're currently doing, do those come under checks maybe periodically? Who do you report to anyone to ensure that there is the international standard that's being kept?
Well, in a sense, yes. We have to adhere to the legislation, first of all, which is congruent with other customs legislation throughout the world.
Okay.
Right? We also have to uphold, like I said, all the treaties that we are signed on to. So basically, the Ministry of Trade would partner with us to ensure that we are doing exactly what we're supposed to be doing in terms of those types of treaties. We recently joined the World Customs Organization, right? So in September last year, we became the 187th member of the World Customs Organization. And they are the body that are basically in charge of regulating customs throughout the world. And more so, now that we are members, we have a greater obligation to ensure that our processes, our procedures are in line with their recommendations. And they also facilitate that for us. They assist us. They give us capacity building. They give us access to information and technical assistance in ensuring that we actually live up to the standard of an international, what is expected of customs administration.
So a person's thinking that customs just doing their own thing because they want to.
Not.
From the perspective of information, right? Now, the information we gather through the Asecutor system is shared with the Ministry of Trade. And they're actually responsible for sharing that information with the international organizations which we have signed treaties with. So we have to ensure that the information is correct. That's why sometimes persons may come to customs with documentation and we say, okay, we can't accept this, right? Because it's not legible, it's not clear. Descriptions on the invoice is not sufficient for us to do proper classification of items. Because from an international standpoint, they do not look at the individual item, but rather they look at the classification because it's standardized, right? So when it comes to auditing of our imports and our exports, right, that's where the level is, right? So we have a role to play when it comes to the correct classification of items based on what persons are importing and exporting. Because from an exportation standpoint, we're also responsible for sharing that trade data, but it also assists the government in their budgetary practices because they need to know what our main exports are, right, and how they can be facilitated.
Okay. So we've been talking a lot about some of the challenges that you experience as customs officers or just generally, but let's look at some of the successes. What have you identified, maybe just personally amongst yourselves, or even, well, within the organization, what are some of the successes that you've seen, maybe from the time you've started working to now, with regards to the customs?
Well, a major success, as I said, is our St. Vincent and Grenadines ascension to the World Customs Organization. That is a big one for us, and it's going to open a lot of doors for our administration to advance. Another success I could say is that we met our revenue target last year. So
how people feel about this? But anyhow.
Well, like I said, when the customs meets our revenue target, it gives the Treasury enough to pay your salaries, to pay the teachers, to fix the roads, things like that. So that's our contribution to that.
It's also a good indication of the state of the economy because what it means as well is that there's more importation, there's more cash flow, right? So it's a good thing. It's not necessarily that we're taxing one particular person.
Are you overcharging?
Right? Or overcharging. It doesn't mean that. What it means is that there was more trade, right? And more trade, right, is always good for the economy.
Good point.
We are also upgrading our Asecutor system. That's the interface that that's the technological interface that we utilize to receive
customs data.
To receive customs data, right? Thank you, Lorenzo. So we're updating from version 4.2 to version 4.4.0, which is a very up-to-date version, right? So we're basically in the lead in the OACS in terms of upgrading our Asecutor system. It's gonna give us a lot more opportunity to implement risk management. There are AI integrations into this new Asecutor that would allow us to better analyze data and basically have a more efficient system. Right. There are a lot of new modules.
Yes, there are a lot of new modules in the upgrade, and it helps us to integrate more with web services. So, for example, the online payment is a web service that is integrated with Asecutor to allow you to make payments for declarations online. And that was launched in 2024. And it is currently being used by some organizations because it allows persons now to pay. If you're overseas, you can pay using your debit and your credit card. So that is a success for us. Another success is the implementation of the electronic certificate of origin. We have successfully completed a pilot that was ended in November of last year, and we have gotten approval from CARICOM to go ahead with full implementation. Right? And that allows exporters to make their declaration for certificates of origin online. They no longer have to bring 5 and 6 copies to the customs. It is a faster certification process, and they can now email those documents to the importing country and have the information scanned so that they can see no modification was done to the hard copy versus what was actually approved.
Okay. And the scanners? Scanners.
Yes, we have non-intrusive scanners. They play a major part in interdiction of illicit and dangerous goods, such as guns, drugs, dangerous chemicals, and they allow us to basically divert our resources,
Human resources.
right,
Mhm.
to high risk and allow for easier facilitation to the compliance importers.
There's some WhatsApp question here. This one will make you smile. Sex toys illegal?
In the Customs Control and Management Act, there is a part about illicit and explicit items, and sex toys fall under that. So yes, they are.
On the illicit items. How okay, this might be above you, but how and when are certain things, who makes the push for certain things to not fall under those type of categories? Would it have to come from maybe citizens putting it to their representatives so that it can be changed into law? Because I think part of this may have stemmed from religion. And because it's religion, it became law. So which is why as customs officers, it's not allowed in the country, but we live in a little bit of a different time, right? So
when it comes to legislation and existing legislation, unless they're repealed or changed in some way, right, then we are tasked to enforce them. When it comes to the interpretation of those legislations, then the Attorney General, right, if they see fit, can write specific procedural can write specific procedural notices, right, to say, okay, well, even though the legislation says this, right, we are going to allow these items, right, because that would be the interpretation of the legislation. So at the end of the day, it would have to go back to either Parliament to have the law repealed and changed, or the Attorney General can make a notice to say, well, okay, these items are allowed. For example, when camouflage material was first made prohibited, it used to be everything camouflage, right? From a suitcase to a tights to off the shoulder shirt, right? And then it was adjusted, right, from the Attorney General to say no, only camouflage material in rolls, right? So the material itself, or clothing that resembles what our SSU would wear. Right, so that became more specific for our implementation.
Because what we're trying to avoid is the impersonation of an officer.
All right, and I think that's an interesting point that you raised, because we just heard that camouflage was banned, right? All forms of camouflage was banned. But then within recent years, we're noticing that persons that might be wearing a camouflage top, they might be wearing a camouflage pants, they might be wearing a camouflage boots, So I don't think that many of us knew at what point things had changed, because all we knew was all camouflage was banned, right? So, yeah, but not to have too much on the point with these sex toys, but I think y'all get a lot of beat up and fight up for this. And I mean, as I said, I know that it stemmed from religion. I believe more than likely it stemmed from religion, but I think sometimes it's just to emphasize that it's not from the end of customs, right? This is what is there in the law. You all have to enforce it. And
yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And the final question, who audits the customs in regards to their complying with regulation required by the international bodies?
When it comes to revenue collection, the audit department would audit us. When it comes to trade data, then the Ministry of Trade would go through the data to ensure that it's correct, right? And any anomalies they would flag, and then we would do our necessary auditing of internal processes to ensure that we did collect the correct data before that data is sent on to the international bodies.
And when it is sent on, so in the event that it is sent on to the international body and they have queries, they would reach back out to us to iron out or to ensure that we're not in violation of anything.
Okay. All right. So we're almost to the end of this morning's program, but is there anything in particular that maybe we didn't ask that you want to highlight or to bring out? We did a good job this morning.
I think we covered a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So maybe, Monica, what you could probably do is just remind us of, from the standpoint of recognizing the work of customs, And not just the work of customs, but the togetherness of the organization in terms of personal development, working together as a staff, working together as a unit, and how by extension this helps not just the customs department, but the organization itself. And maybe, Lorenzo, you can wrap up by letting us know why, as citizens, we should not give customs officials a hard time.
Well, okay, so it's important for us as a department to celebrate ourselves, to recognize our role in society, to remind ourselves of our role in society, and to just motivate ourselves to keep going at it, And this morning, I just want to big up our customs officers who are listening, whether online or on the radio this morning. Because a lot of times, I know we get a lot of flack, but I can tell you that customs officers show up in the ash and in the rain and late nights, early mornings. They come out and they really go hard for the department and for the citizens of St. Vincent and the Grenadines. And also, I would like to emphasize that partnership is important for us. Right? That is why we have made this commitment to reaching out to the general public, to having our exhibitions, to coming on the radio, and to engaging more, because we have recognized that meeting our stakeholders halfway is really important for our mandate, and collaborating with the importers, the exporters, brokers, port operators, and all our stakeholders is essential in building the trade environment that we want for a secure, a predictable, and efficient St. Vincent and the Grenadines and a customs. So we had to work together, and I just want to encourage everybody to, again, visit the website for information, customs.gov.vc, and call for information. And we're here for you, and we're also, importantly, not just collecting revenue and overcharging, as you may think, but we're here to protect our society.
Yes, and when it comes to persons beating up and bashing on customs, I just want to say that we are civil servants, right? We're tasked to do a job, right? And this is a job that we have to do. We are a law enforcement organization, and a lot of the times our laws are old, right? They need to be changed, and they need to change with the times. So I will encourage persons become knowledgeable about the laws that we enforce, right? And then you can make your representation to the legislature. Right? That, okay, these laws are old, they need to be repealed, they need to be adjusted for modern times. And then we can now enforce those laws. Also, I would encourage persons, as Monica said, to go to the customs website. There is a wealth of information on the website. You can navigate all the links. You can check to see how much duties are charged based on the duty calculator, right? And especially for procedures for import, exportation, there's also information about different concessions that persons might be eligible for. So go ahead and avail yourself to that information. So when you come to customs, you can be as knowledgeable as possible about our role, right? And our responsibilities. And it can help you to become voluntarily compliant, because that's what we want, right? For you to be voluntarily compliant, and we just do our checks.
Okay. All right. So it was indeed a pleasure having both of you here this morning. I'm having you here again this morning.
Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome. And we look forward to another occasion when you're going to be back with us. But enjoy your final 2 days of recognition and celebration. And we look forward to another program with you. All right. So take care. All right. And that